I've said it multiple times before, and I'll say it again. Florida State recruiting is on fire right now. We're sitting with a top 5 class nationally and trending for several more 4 and 5-star players. This has rivals in other programs nervous, but now heading into delusional as they concoct a bunch of wild theories to cope with getting smoked on the recruiting trail. Yes, I'm looking at you, Miami, along with Georgia, Auburn, and Michigan. Florida State has been lighting it up on the recruiting trail for really the last 2 months straight. In that time, they've landed 2 5-stars and 6 4-stars. They're also trending for a couple of blue-chip defensive backs such as Zaquan Patterson and Jamari Howard. A lot of these have been pretty heated recruiting battles with several other programs, and after Florida State ultimately ended up winning out, fans and beat writers from these programs took to their message boards to cope with their sad feels. For starters, Auburn, who has been involved alongside Florida State for several recruitments like KJ Bolden and Zaquan Patterson, it seems they never want to admit that Florida State is in the mix, and they definitely don't like to admit when a kid is trending towards FSU. The night before KJ committed to Florida State, Auburn writers were reporting that FSU had fallen completely out of the race and it was now between Auburn and Georgia. Surprise, surprise, they were wrong. Now today they're also trying to say that Florida State isn't a factor for Zaquan Patterson, and I disagree, and I'd actually consider Florida State the favorite as it stands right now. Don't take my word for it though, as 247 recruiting expert Steve Wiltfong, Zach Blossing and Knowles 247, and even Chad Smith on 3 are all saying Florida State leads for Patterson. FSU even now holds the lead at 67% on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine. So what makes the Auburn guys think they know more than several national experts who are usually very accurate? I'm not sure, but I can't wait to prove them wrong again. FSU pulled KJ Bolden back on August 5th. Now this was a Florida State UGA battle with Auburn supposedly making a late surge, though I think this was more just to drum up some hype for his announcement. Of course, FSU ended up winning his services in the end, picking him right out of Kirby Smart's backyard, which of course didn't sit right with UGA fans, and rightfully so. But the theories that they've come out with as their way of explaining this were comical to say the least. What I love more than anything is that the UGA boards were full of confidence even the morning of KJ's announcement, but as soon as he announced FSU, they had just nothing but excuses. My favorite one being the comment that said KJ Bolden desperately wanted to be a dog so bad, but FSU was essentially just offering too much money for him to walk away from. Someone literally typed in that KJ called Kirby Smart in tears, quote, bawling his eyes out the night before. Give me a break. First of all, KJ was obviously greeted with a quality NIL offer, and especially if it was some absurdly high number like they were making it out to be, I highly doubt the first thing he did was call another coach bawling his eyes out. Second of all, KJ obviously held interest in FSU from the start. They may have not have always been in the lead, but KJ has said for a long time that FSU was his dream school growing up. But this comes down to relationships, especially with Norvell and Pat Surtain, and of course, yes, a healthy NIL package. Now on to Zaquan Patterson, who's a top 100 DB that seems to be trending FSU's way just days away from his commitment. This one seems to be between FSU, Michigan, Miami, and Auburn. For Miami, he's a local kid, so on the surface, him going to Miami would make sense, and it was kind of where everybody initially thought he'd end up. But that seemed to sort of fizzle out over the last several weeks. There was talks of him wanting to leave the state, which pointed more towards a school like Michigan or Auburn, and a few weeks ago, I would have probably said Michigan is in the lead. Now, I'm not really sure what exactly has changed as of late, but this one seemed to turn FSU's way, with FSU gaining predictions and taking the lead on the on-3 RPMs. Cue the Meltdowns. I think Michigan initially thought they were in a good spot as well, so when they got wind of the Florida State smoke, they took it better than Miami, but they still didn't take it well. They're on their boards ripping our supposed pay-for-play strategy, complaining about the insane way we're throwing money around. Now, while I agree that Florida State has gotten very competitive in the NIL space thanks to Ingram Smith and the Battle's End, the term pay-for-play is just a way to try to downplay how well FSU has been recruiting, and it's embarrassing to see. It's an excuse to try to cope with the fact that your school isn't recruiting better. And as bad as this is, it's nowhere near the crap that I've seen Miami writers and fans put out. I know they're usually the big mouths of the offseason until they get blown out by Middle Tennessee, and they're always a little bit delusional, but this one honestly surprised me. As I mentioned before, Miami was probably in the driver's seat for Zaquan Patterson in the beginning, and he's really a kid that they have and should have circled from the beginning. So when they hear that he's trending to FSU of all places, yikes. They're now on the boards trying to spread this conspiracy theory that there's some supposed chicken farmer in Delaware who wasn't impacted by the avian flu and somehow cornered the chicken market and has made millions. Now, what that has to do with FSU recruiting, I'm not sure. Maybe this guy all the way in Delaware is that concerned with making sure a 17-year-old commits to Florida State. I'll tell you one thing. If this is somehow true, keep it coming. Also, I'm dropping everything to move to Delaware and become a chicken farmer if it's such a lucrative thing. To add on to that, they're saying that the payments are already being made to kids who are committed even though they aren't even enrolled yet, which isn't really how NIL works. They're also saying we're dropping bags of kids who haven't even committed yet, like Patterson. Apparently, we have guys in Tampa and Atlanta who are somehow involved. And there was supposedly this student in Tallahassee that goes by the alias of Nico and is the one making the bi-weekly bag drops and personally doing said handoffs. So to recap, there's some guy in Delaware who is also in a network with guys in Tampa and Atlanta, and they all coordinate with someone at Florida State to deliver cash in person to then be used to pay 17-year-olds who aren't even committed to the program. They also cap it off by saying that our season is going to implode and we're going to lose 5 games. So we're just trying to lock in a really good recruiting class before the season starts. Oh boy. While I really got a kick out of this, I also felt a little bad for the level of delusion and the way these guys are trying to cope down there in Coral Gables. I do think if whoever this is wants a career in fan fiction, they need to find some better ways to make the story make better sense and not contradict itself. To only add to that, David Lake of Inside the U come out with what was essentially an attempted hit piece on Mike Norvell and Florida State, basically making the claim that Mike Norvell refuses to play true freshmen, and apparently Mike recruits kids from high school just to also recruit transfer guys to play over them instead. So all this networking and money they're throwing around to land high school kids is just pointless because Mike Norvell doesn't care to play them anyway. This piece writes like Mike Norvell doesn't hold his word or isn't loyal to his recruits. Now, I know they're aware of the Destin Hill situation where Mike Norvell and FSU held a kid scholarship for 2 years while he was delaying his enrollment due to personal family issues. And by the way, Hill is on campus now and will definitely see some playing time this season, according to Coach Norvell. So all this to question Mike Norvell's loyalty of all things is just ridiculous. And even outside of Destin, there's 6 to 10 other true freshmen that can expect to see some level of playing time this season. This article goes on to list several of Miami's true freshmen that are expected to start this season. And my other issue with this is that you typically don't want to be in a position where you're forced to play true freshmen. Yes, some of them can be very talented and are already in college shape, but it still takes time to get acclimated and learn that kind of system. Experience is always an asset, and it's one FSU has in spades for the 2023 season. But either way, I fully trust that Mike Norvell is going to field the team most capable of winning games, whether it be transfers or true freshmen. I don't know if publishing this article was just meant to get under FSU's skin or if they thought that recruits like Zaquan Patterson would read it and go to Miami instead just for the appeal of potential early playing time. But either way, this article is way off base and frankly very unprofessional in my opinion. And it's also just an obvious attempt at shaming a program just out of pure jealousy and desperation. But what else is new with Miami? So you gotta love all these crazy theories, bad journalism, and just straight up sad coping strategies. I'm honestly not sure which one is my favorite. The idea that KJ Bolden called Kirby Smart bawling his eyes out, or the idea that there's a chicken farmer in Delaware somewhere who is somehow behind a shady network of FSU paying recruits. Nonetheless, it's fun to be recruiting this well, and it's fun to watch our rivals squirm like this. This is a theme I fully expect to continue until signing day, so get your popcorn ready and maybe we'll get some more funny stories. But in the meantime, let me know what you guys think of all this. Does anybody have the contact info of this chicken farmer? I'd love to personally thank him for helping us out in recruiting. Let me know in the comments, and let's talk Noles.